How hard is your heart? Welcome to day 3 of our Hebrews reading plan. Today's reading is chapter 3. Take a second to read chapter 3 if you haven't already. The image that resonates with me out of today's reading is this image of the hardened heart. It's not a question of if our hearts are hard, but how hard are they? All of us have ways that our hearts have shut down or walled off or calcified spots. In a couple of ways, our hearts get hard. I want to talk about 2 ways this morning. But first, let me tell you about my favorite marriage researchers. Dr. John Gottman and his wife, Julie, are marriage researchers who have spent their life and work studying couples that last. And what they tell us is there's one way to predict whether couples will still be married 10 years from now, after watching couples talk for just a few minutes. And here it is. They talk about the concept of bids, that in every relationship, somebody makes a bid for connection. And in that moment, the partner can respond in one of 2 ways. For example, I might make a bid in the morning to say, Ryan, would you like a cup of coffee? And in that moment, Ryan can respond by either turning towards my bid or turning away from my bid. So I say, Ryan, would you like a cup of coffee? He can say, no thanks, but thank you for offering. And in that moment, he's turned toward me and connected. He could turn away from me by saying, I already have coffee, don't you see it? Or he could walk away and ignore. There's all kinds of ways you can ignore someone's bid. But I think this concept is so helpful when applied to our relationships with God, especially in this passage. If God is making bids toward us, a bid to connect, do we turn towards God or do we turn away from God? The writer of Hebrews says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion. Now, the writer is referring to Israel in the Exodus, how they were turning away from God. But he's using that to challenge his current audience, saying, when God speaks, when God moves, are you turning towards his bid for connection or are you turning away? Because when you turn away, your heart gets hardened. The walls go up, just like in a relationship with a human. So when you hear from God, you probably don't hear an audible voice, but when you feel that nudge, when you sense that guidance, or you sense that God is asking something from you or inviting you into something, how do you respond to God's bid? Turn toward God and not away. That's the first way our hearts get hard, when we ignore God's bids for connection or when we just flat out reject him. Here's the second thing, and it comes to us in verse 12. No, verse 13. Encourage one another daily, as long as it's called today. Like every day, encourage each other, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. What is he saying here? He's exposing the effect on our hearts that sin has. Sin always begins with a lie, with something deceitful about us, about the thing we're about to do, the thought we have. And the more we give in to that sin, it becomes a habit, and that habit then hardens our heart. It doesn't harden our heart because it's called sin. It's called sin because it hardens our hearts. And God's desire for us is to have hearts that are tender and alive, that are feeling and able to connect, to love others and to love him. And the effect of sin on our hearts is always to calcify them, to create toughened spots. Are there hard spots on your heart because of sin? Because of the lies you've bought into that this is no big deal or you need to get ahead, whatever those stories are that keep you in that habit. So I'll ask you again, how hard is your heart? Where are the tough spots? Whether because you are ignoring bids by the Holy Spirit, or you are actively involved in things that lead you away from God that have built up hard spots. And what do we do with those hard spots? Here's what I would encourage you today. After this video plays, take a moment or 2 of quiet and ask the Holy Spirit, where has my heart grown hard? Where has my heart grown hard? Are there things you want me to be sensitive to be tender to, that I have cut off and walled off? Write it down, speak it, but leave a few moments of quiet, expecting that God will speak. Our hearts are hardened. Some of us in little cracks and spots, some of us in big old places. But let today be the day that you allow God to tenderize your heart once more.